Hello everyone, and welcome to the Giant Brain Lecture Theatre. I'm Ian McAllister, and I'll be your interviewer tonight. The Scottish gaming scene is a bright, vibrant place full of people making, playing, and talking about games. There have always been organisations putting together cons, and over the years those have grown, changed, vanished, and reformed. It always felt to me like we needed a unifying event, something that brought together a lot of the disparate parts of our community into celebration of what gaming could be about. Starting in 2018, Tabletop Scotland did just that. 2018 event was a great time. I was personally involved in helping the playtest zone part of the con, and 2019 saw the event grow some 50% in attendance and doubling the floor space the convention occupied. And then, well, you know what happened then. 2022 sees the triumphant return of Tabletop Scotland. To talk about that and much more, it is my great pleasure to welcome David Wright and John Harper to the Giant Brain HQ. How are you doing, chaps?
All good.
Evening.
Thanks for having us, Ian.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for coming along. How has the last couple of years been for you both personally?
So, outside of Tabletop Scotland?
Outside of Tabletop Scotland. Before we get to that. Well, probably much the same challenges as lots and lots of people. Basically stayed in the house for almost all of it. Worked from home, which was fine. Moved all of my role-playing games online, which was also fine. But I had played a single board game between March 2020 and I think it must have been about November last year, 2021, which was weird because, it wasn't practical. My family don't play board games, so it was kind of one of these things. So yeah. Pretty soft
a little bit, but I'm still here.
Got used to the same four walls working from home, very much. Got bored of that quite quickly, turns out. Did a lot of that. Still managed to get some gaming in, board gaming. Because of the bubble arrangement in COVID, part of my bubble was Big Brother Simon, who's also one of the organisers of Tabletop Scotland, and immediate family who do games, so some of them do games, so we were bubbled so we could get some gaming in, and moved a lot of stuff online. Everyone that knows Dave knows that he loves his role-playing games, and he's a role-playing fanatic. Dave DMs a fortnightly D&D game.
Yep.
That Simon and I are both players in, and I can confirm Dave has a malicious and evil vindictive streak, and somehow manages to rig dice on a virtual dice machine.
Yep, I've hacked the API.
You can definitely ask him about how he does that. Yeah,
he makes my dice stuck, and his dice are brilliant. That's simple. I can't roll a 20; he can always roll 20. It's a bit mysterious.
It is weird.
Does sound mysterious. Yeah, the same for me for board games. I got my biggest review pile ever just before before COVID, and then it was just like, oh well, I will not be reviewing these for 2 years. Great, awesome. Anyway, how is Tabletop Scotland shaping up for its 2022 return?
It's shaping up very nicely, I think. It's the sort of thing that number of exhibitors are up from what we had in 2019. We've got the same amount of floor space. We're tweaking certain parts of the layout. But overall, everything's going really well. Our ticket sales, I don't know if you heard me say this when I saw you a couple of weeks ago, Ian, but it's kind of like we opened ticket sales 2 months later than we normally do. So we normally open at the end of January, we went for the end of March. But in those first 24 hours, we sold the equivalent of what we sold in 3 months for 2019.
Great. Which
was both terrifying and kind of affirming that people wanted to come.
I think we held off in opening up ticket sales to this year because we wanted to be sure that we would be COVID in that situation where we were clear and happy about how COVID was panning out and how that would impact attendance, because some people might not know this, but some people might. But the venue we used, the Jewish Centre in Perth, became an NHS venue for COVID, and it became a testing. Vaccination centre. So that was in it. We, even if we'd been able to hold an event, we wouldn't have been able to hold an event at the venue, and then they needed to effectively go back to being a leisure facility after all that, and that's had an impact. So we held off on opening ticket sales, and we thought, right, we'll give it 2 months. 2 months came in, and boom, we saw a big spike at the beginning. We've seen nice consistent sales, I think, throughout. Obviously, we don't want anyone to go, I don't need to go. We still want you to buy your ticket in advance, if only so.
Yes, please.
Yeah, please. If you've not bought your ticket yet and you're thinking, I might want to go, then definitely you do want to go. So buying tickets in advance helps us and helps you make sure you've got plenty of time for booking events as well. But it's been good. There's been a lot of things have changed, I think it's fair to say, but a lot of stuff stayed exactly the same. I mean, the passion's there, not just from attendees, but exhibitors. There are lots of exhibitors that are very excited to be coming and see familiar faces. For some people, it may well be their first large event or shared event since 2019 because of COVID. So we're excited to see a lot of familiar faces and new faces.
Yeah, that's the case for me. It'll be my first big event since COVID. I was vaguely thinking about going to Expo, but just couldn't afford it this year. But Tabletop Scotland will be the first big convention I've attended since one thing and another happened. Indeed. Yeah. So do you think you're sort of close to capacity then with ticket sales, or are you still quite a bit of way to go?
So the way that our ticket sales have happened in the past, and obviously that's all we can go by, is roughly 70% of our attendees buy their 70 to 75 buy their tickets before they arrive, and then our 25% are on the day, which is absolutely fine as a model. But if you can buy it earlier, then please do. But no, I don't think we'll be at capacity. We weren't at capacity in 2019. There were always spaces available for open play, as an example, even though it was very hot. But it's the sort of thing that we know there is space to grow, and we've been a bit more creative with how the exhibitors are laid out to be able to fit more in roughly the same amount of space as to what we gave them in 2019.
One thing, a very conscious decision right from the start. Dave very much said years ago, when we started talking about an event, the thing that eventually became Tabletop Scotland.
Yeah. One
of the things that we talked about early doors was, regardless of what the venue is, where the venue is, or what we end up doing, what the type of convention, one thing we want to be able to do is make sure we can grow it, and use the buzzword organically and all that stuff, but also bear in mind that what we want is people to be happy and relaxed and comfortable, and it's little things that the public don't need to know or be necessarily aware of. Is, for example, we've very clearly set a rule about how far there should be between seats and tables.
Yes.
So we could easily fit more tables in the space,
but we choose not to.
Yeah. So growth-wise, there's options, but we've decided we want something that's friendly, welcoming, open, inclusive, and if you're going to do all those things, you have to take into account a lot of factors. One of those is ultimately what makes people comfortable, because somebody who's uncomfortable is not going to stay. The great things about open playing is the open play area is we've got enough space between tables so that people can come and go as they please, sit down for 12 hours and play Twilight Imperium if they're so inclined, or nip in and out of the open play 3-4 times while they're there to play different games.
I think that's a very short game of Twilight Imperium, I think.
Well,
it's 12 hours, I suppose you're using.
And also, that's the point at which at least one person's going to either be completely and utterly enraged or so drunk they just don't come back.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, John's spot on with that reference to the space. It's something that, through talking to other convention organisers, they always have a little bit of a raised eyebrow about how much space we put between tables, or more accurately, between the backs of chairs. Because so the example is, this is not a criticism, is UK Games Expo put 1.5 metres between tables. We put 1.5 metres between the backs of chairs.
Yeah. Right. That's quite a big difference.
That is quite a big difference. It's almost 2.5 metres between tables then. Yeah. So, it's little things like that help help the atmosphere of the convention, we think. But anyway.
I mean, it's still busy, it's still buzzing, but the fact is people have got space, and people do better in space. And it means that we're also thinking about people that have access needs that might need that extra space. So, we want an open space for everyone to be involved in, and you can't do that if people can't get access. Simple as that.
Yeah. There are quite a few conventions that started up again last year. They started up again in 2021, and they've continued through to this year. What led to you postponing the 2 years, 2020 and 2021, and wanting to go this year?
So as John alluded to, our default option would have been obviously have something in the Jura Centre, but they became a vaccination centre. I think it was around about the May of last year, John. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, it was April into
May. It was something like that, and so that that largely made our decision for us, because we were originally planning to host it, or at least we'd said, here are the dates, let's wait and see type thing. We hadn't opened ticket sales, we hadn't invoiced any exhibitors or anything like that. We were just kind of like, let's see. But then the decision was made for us, which in some respects was both a relief and a challenge. A relief in that we didn't have to make the decision. But the challenge was, well, do we do something else? And almost going back to the capacity reference, one of the challenges with an event the size of Tabletop Scotland is if we were to move it to another venue but not downscale it, there's really only a handful of those in Scotland. We use over 3,500 square meters. Almost 3,000 square meters of that is on one floor. The
irony of that situation, of course, is that the venues in Scotland of a size that we need, a couple of them were like, one of them was immediately around about the same time as the Jewish Centre. This is now a large open space the NHS can use as a vaccination centre.
Precisely.
And then the big one, the obvious big one, is the SCCC. And lo and behold, the SCCC was at one point going to become
Nightingale Hospital.
Hospital. They made it clear, big open flat space. You can fit a lot of beds in there. So realistically, the choice of venues for 2021 was, we get extraordinarily lucky. COVID is dealt with absurdly quickly, and somehow we can have an event in August. Or realistically, we were confident, I would say, that it wasn't going to happen last year when we were planning. We did all the planning. If you look at the planning we did for 2018 and 2019, and this work we started for 2020, we reached the same points at the same time in 2021. We got to a point where we're like, this is the point where we would normally be discussing confirming the date for ticket sales, confirming all this stuff, and then we had pre-agreed triggers that we would do or not do at certain points. And those natural trigger points all hit exactly when they were meant to hit, and that's the exact moment we're like, well, venue's gone.
Yeah.
It's going to take us 3 months to get
somewhere.
If we're lucky.
If we're lucky.
Actually, that work is not worth the effort. And the risk was far too great for us as Tabletop Scotland, but also for our actual attendees because of COVID and the associated risks. So we said, you know what, no, we can easily just press pause again. The great thing is we can press pause. We contacted the exhibitors, contacted the various different people, and the moment we said we're pressing pause, they were like, fantastic, we'll see you in 2022.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, it was an easy decision to say not do it. If it had been entirely possible to do it, then absolutely we would have done it. But it was one of those moments when Mary from the Jewish Centre emailed, and it wasn't just me she was telling, because essentially they had to cancel every single event they had scheduled to say we're now a vaccination centre, and we were like, right, okay, that's made our decision for us. Cool.
And the second part of the question was there alternatives? Dave, being the masochist he is, said, I'm going to go and do an online con, Albacon, Barry event and online stuff. He asked if we wanted to be involved, the rest of us involved in Tabletop Scotland. My answer was no, I'm going to drink instead. Simon, I wasn't paying attention when the question was answered by anyone else for that matter. So, for me, 2021, I was happy just to take a break from it and gear up for this year. Whereas Dave can't sit still for more than 5 minutes.
No, I need something to occupy my time. I had suddenly all this free time. It's like, what do I do with this?
If anyone's ever spent more than half an hour with Dave, it's impossible to get him to do anything you want him to do, and you want him to shut up and sit down sometimes. Anyone who's at 2018, 2019 will have seen me at least more than one occasion grabbing him and say, if you don't eat something in the next 10 minutes, I'm going to lock you in a room. And I almost did at one point. So Dave has a can-do drive attitude. I have it's done. We can chill on it for 12 months. Not quite 12 months. So Dave did a great job with Albacon, and they raised a ton of money for charity as well. So
we did.
And I personally kept at least one brewery in business. So all good.
Brilliant.
At least one.
So you've done Albacon, so you could tell us a little bit more about that, Dave. And also, how have you sort of maintained interest in Tabletop Scotland over the sort of couple of fallow years?
Yeah, I mean, Albacon came from a conversation with my mate Mark, and we did it in 2020 and in 2021. It was kind of like, Mark, after we pulled the plug on the initial, then the postponed date for 2020, it was like, right, okay, what am I going to do? And Mark was like, well, you can do something online. Why don't you do that? And I was like, right, okay, only if you do it with me. Because I was like, there's no way I'm doing this on my own. Because I had no experience at that stage of doing anything fancy online other than running my own game. So it was learn how to use Discord. It was learn how to, do all this kind of integration between Discord and websites and all that kind of stuff. But the first year we raised money for a charity called It's Good to Give, which is a kids' cancer charity, which was very close to, it still is very close to Mark, because his son Sam has leukemia, or had leukemia. He's through remission now. And we raised over $3,000 for them, which was amazing, for an event that came out of nowhere and had, 40, 50 games on the schedule. We charged tickets for the games. So basically all that money went straight to the charity. It was just like really simple model.
Yeah.
Where we had people donating money, like publishers donating money, not just donating product, but donating money, which was just so bizarre. But that went really well. And it was then, okay, we're going to do this again. And I was like, okay, we'll do it again once I know that Tabletop Scotland 2021 isn't going to happen. Because I can't do the two of them at the same time. That would kill me. So we did it again in 2021 and raised £3,300 for Penumbra, the Scottish mental health charity, which was kind of driven by, there was certainly been a lot of content online during the pandemic about role-playing and the kind of mental health benefits of it and stuff like that. And it was kind of like, well, that felt like a good fit. And I had done work with Penumbra before in my day job. So it was like, well, I just kind of thought they're an obvious answer to that question. So, but it was myself and Mark and 4 others, Bob, Kirsten, Ollie and Simon, that were involved in doing that. And it was really just reaching out to anybody that we knew or otherwise to say, would you run a game for us? And we had people from 9 different countries running games for us. It was just mad, but great. But the weirdest thing about it is when it's happening, you've got nothing to do.
Yeah, because everyone's just in games.
Exactly. It's all just happening in the Discord. And it's kind of weird looking at a Discord, seeing all these people in channels and going, I don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
Ironically enough, a huge number of people playing games, which is what we aim for at Tabletop Scotland. Yeah. But in that situation, and almost to an extent, what we've dealt with 2 times now, and this will be the 3rd time, is ideally we want to be doing nothing on the Saturday and Sunday.
Ideally.
I mean, it's impossible. That will not happen. But you know it's going well when you're standing there going, what am I meant to be doing now? I've forgotten something.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, actually, I can take 5 minutes to have a cup of tea. But I mean, I was just impressed with how quickly all that came together. So, like I said, kudos to Dave and Mark and everyone else involved in it, and they raised a big ton of money. But what's noticeable is that a lot of the people certainly from what I've seen, is people that attended Albacon online.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Dave will probably have numbers because he does numbers. I refuse to pay attention to them. Were new to the hobbies.
Yes.
The gaming hobbies. They were new to D&D, new to Pathfinder, you name it as a game, but new to tabletop gaming in general. And that's, and Dave will be able to give you a number for it, is Dave administers the RPG Scotland Facebook.
D&D Scotland. Yeah.
And what the membership 10 times higher?
Well, the D&D... I appreciate we're slightly going off in tangents here, but that's how it works, right? The D&D Scotland Facebook group originally was the D&D Adventurers League in Scotland Facebook group.
Right, sure.
And it had about, 80, maybe 100 people in it. And I suggested to the other admin at the time, Tony, look, let's just make it D&D Scotland. This was literally just before the pandemic hit. And because then if people want to play AL, they can play AL. And so we did that. And it went from, as I say, around about 80 to 100 people to, as current count, about 2,000 people.
Oof.
Which At one stage, we were getting like 50, 60 people joining every day, and it was just crazy. But very easy to admin because it was literally people just saying who's running games online, and people were returning to the hobby from having not played for like 15 years, and it was kind of like, right, okay, so we then created a Discord, which was just before we did Albacon, and it was kind of like, right, well, let's create a Discord to enable this community to play games together. So we do that, and that Discord has games running on it every day of the week, still, even now.
Great.
Dave said, we're going off a tangent, but actually the reason why I was leading into that was because part of the question you asked was how we've kept interest in Tabletop Scotland.
Yes.
And the answer is that's part of the answer. Part of the answer by being visible, being approachable, by making sure that we're talking to our audience. And actually, we've got the Tabletop Scotland Facebook pages, we've got the Tabletop Scotland groups, which are busy, and we were constantly posting on there. We did the World Cup of Board Games.
Ticket to Ride one.
Yeah, Ticket to Ride, which absolutely was I would have predicted.
Well, actually, none of us had money on that. I think I'll remind you that none of us had money on that.
Well, no, because I'm not stupid enough to gamble, but probably one of my top 3 favourite board games of all time and variations of.
Because you love trains.
Yeah, because Love Train, basically. And, and we constantly post about stuff, we talked about things, we had weekly, and Dave still does weekly.
Yeah.
Post what I've been up to this week.
Because it was like 2 or 3 weeks after lockdown kicked in, I was like, I'll just ask the question, how's everyone doing? And I've done that every Friday. And
every Friday we get a great set of responses, and as 2022, so Tabletop Scotland 2022 is happening, that we've deliberately changed the posts that goes now to talk about events and retails happening, and promoting the event. And we've never stopped promoting it, but we've kept that engagement going. And it really is just a case of keep talking about it, keep being involved in people's games, asking them what they're doing, what they're excited about, what they're playing, and feed off that to keep saying, well, don't forget, we're excited to see you playing games.
Yeah.
We're putting on this event that hopefully these people will enjoy. And I'm quite encouraged. Yeah, exactly. And I'm quite encouraged, and I think we all are quite encouraged that what we're seeing is a lot of people saying, I got back into this hobby, or I got into this hobby playing online 2 years ago because I was stuck in the house.
Yeah.
I want to do it in person. I want to try this big event. I want to go, we've got the D&D Epics. We've got all these different role-playing systems that people who've got the board games library. We've got all this. This might be some people, this will be their first opportunity to actually engage in these things on the big side of things. And so there's a level of excitement there, and that's what I'm excited for, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm excited for it as well. I'm not committed to anything this year as well, so I'm just going to be there.
Really? You're a free soul.
A free soul, yeah. Might do some interviews, might play some games, might drink some beer. All these things are entirely possible.
Exactly.
Things might definitely happen.
Yeah. Well, before we move on to the event in general, I've got a few questions about that. I just wanted to touch on one thing that people are going to want to know anyway. Obviously, the government has declared that we are living with COVID. I'm doing air quotes, so this is brilliant radio. Many are concerned about attending large organised events like Tabletop Scotland. Do you know at the moment what your COVID policies are going to be around the event itself?
So we have a policy on the website. I am conscious it's not on the front page, but it is all kind of baked into the terms and conditions. So what our policy is, and we announced it, I think it was in March, but we've taken the government's guidance, which is they recommend masks in crowded indoor spaces, and translated to that, we want people to wear masks. We are reviewing that constantly, and it's the sort of thing that as the world moves forward, and I don't mean moves forward as over COVID, as the world moves forward, we can see right now that things like case numbers are climbing and hospitalizations are climbing, and it's like because there's more variants, and it's kind of like, what do we do would be the kind of key question there. We even just as individuals want to have a safe event, right? Because the last thing we need is for one of us to get ill during the event. So being selfish about it, masks are a good thing for that. But similarly, it's the sort of thing, a lot of our attendees are comforted by the fact, and they've said this both publicly and privately, that we are saying wear a mask. And it's a tough one, if I'm honest. But it feels like the right decision. That doesn't mean we won't change it, but we'll make a final decision probably between now and the end of the month.
I think it's worth noting that the two things that we're going to be particularly paying attention to is ultimately any decision we make will be trumped by the venue.
Absolutely.
If the venue turn around and say, we're a public space, we've been told, or the local authority, whoever's responsible says you must do X, Y, Z, we're going to do that. We're not going to have opt-outs or anything like that. As if the venue says it's all mask all day, then that's going to happen. We will move within the leeway we've got within that arrangement, within that relationship with the venue. So that's
of course.
The second thing is what we're also not going to do is we're not going to do anything that we feel or think will cause any harm. So for me, that means that I'm going to be in a giant Zorb bubble all weekend. Well, I mean, I won't be, but mainly because I have to do a panel.
You do?
I have to do a panel.
I mean, you could mic up the inside of the Zorb,
Yeah, but
think of the echo. Just think of the echo inside that. Anyway.
So we're going to, and all we're asking is that everyone attending does the same. Think about what's right, think about what's safe. And if you, as an attendee, don't feel safe, then we need to know, but also at the same time, we'll do everything we can do to make you safe, but you have to do everything you can do to make you safe and others around you safe. None of us are going into this as individuals. We're a collective. We have to be a collective. We're going to be in that sort of space together for that length of time. Don't be a dick.
Fair enough.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So,
although officially that's no longer part of our website.
Against my better judgment.
I know, but never mind.
It's hidden somewhere. So we were talking there about Albacon, obviously it was online RPGs, and Tabletop Scotland has always had quite a big focus on RPGs, setting that apart from some of the other conventions. Why do you make that choice in sort of the original setup of the con, and how do you think it affects the draw of the con?
I'm blaming Dave. I'm jumping in for Dave. Dave.
It's all me. It's all my fault. Well, it is all my fault. But okay, so why are RPGs such a big part of it? Well, it's quite simple because we wanted them to be. Why would we make that decision? Well, I used to run the open role playing community in Edinburgh. I've been a role player since, well, actually, how old am I now? I'm 48, even so 35 years I've been playing role playing. I was going to say that's the wrong person who's doing the talking here. Tell him I had a long day. But it was quite easy to make that decision. I think the first year we did it, we had about 70-ish tables of role-playing games. About 40 of that was D&D. And we deliberately decided to do Adventurers League for D&D because it was quite popular within the retail community in particular at the time. And that worked because it meant we could have an Epic, which is a multi-table interactive event, for those who don't know what that is. But in 2019, I deliberately did a bit more, shall we say, canvassing of the role-playing communities in Scotland to go, what do you want to run? And how many tables can be pulled together? So that grew from 70-ish to just over 100 in 2019. And D&D stayed at 40 because the room we have it in at that time could only fit so many tables. So that was great. That was a great explosion of more games, basically. And all of those games were very busy, which is also great. And this year, it's 110 role-playing games. And we've managed to increase the D&D by another table per slot, so another 5 tables, by reorganising that room that it's in. And this year we've got 2 epics for the D&D as well, which is great fun.
And I think again, this harks back to conversations we were having in hotels in Edinburgh years ago. It seems like a decade ago. I mean, if the first Tabletop Scotland was 2018, I was trying to figure this out the other day. I think the first time we sat down, Dave, myself, Simon, other people, would have been 2015. And
yeah, it was. It was October or November 2015.
Yeah. So one of the things that immediately became apparent was when we were talking about the sort of things people want to do at conventions. Yeah, they want a role play. Yeah, they want a board game. Yeah, they want a war game to a certain extent, and that's a whole kettle of fish we'll come on to in a moment. But ultimately, the people that are coming to conventions, for the main part, will fit into a couple of key groups, and there are people that want to do stuff. They want to role play. They want to play board games. They want they want the convention itself to include other stuff to do while they're there. Mm-hmm. And then there are other people that are just going to come along and see what's happening, and more than likely come with friends or family. And for them, it's a pre-arranged event. So they might plan to meet up with friends and spend the weekend playing games together. So not important for them to have something laid on.
Yeah.
In the sense that they're coming because this will be the chance they get to play an Adventures League or take part in an epic or do a particular role-playing game.
Or playing a Ticket to Ride tournament or whatever it is.
Yeah. So there's those competing elements. And in terms of how do you get, and let's be honest about it, this is a thing where we, Dave, myself, etc., we need to know that come the Monday, the 28th of August.
No.
We've not.
Monday, the 28th of August.
Yeah. The event's Monday. This is
the 29th of August.
Oh, I've lost it.
Yeah,
come Monday, the 29th of August, when we're busy collapsing the setup to put in the cater hire companies coming to pick up all the chairs and tables and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's a business at the back of this. This isn't us putting on a thing for the sake of our own health or our own hairlines.
It does feel like that at times, but yes.
Behind this, Tabletop Scotland is an actual business. We run it as a business, we work as a business, and we had to very early doors make a decision, say what will maximise how many people we can get to attend an event so that our pockets aren't suddenly very empty very quickly. Sure. And we talked about a million different things, and we noticed, and Dave said, look, I've got numbers. He showed us numbers because he does that.
Yeah.
There's a pattern here. Where's there a big gap? And in Scotland especially, big gap was a role-playing focused convention where people had the opportunity to see and try lots of different things. Lots of board gaming as well. Yeah. But the board gaming is people come and play board games, whereas the role-playing is people come in, they're coming for an experiential thing that you don't get necessarily.
Yeah, sure.
And that totally potted RPG focus. Once that's in place, good solid foundation, 2018, 2019, we grew it, we increased the capacity, we added more open play, we were able to focus on making sure we had the games library for the board games was bigger, make the RPGs bigger, like Dave says, get more focus on a variety of RPG games. And same again for what we do in 20 and 21, and this year, grow it again bigger, so we're adding more games this year. Finally got my way 7 years later, we're having no war games though.
We are.
And a lot of that came down to the fact that role gaming takes up a huge amount of space versus board gaming and then versus role playing games. And we need to.
Is it going to be like tournaments or events you're putting on for war games?
It is wargaming open play. It is open play.
Okay.
Yeah,
and War Bases, who are one of our exhibitors, are sponsoring that area by providing terrain for it, so people can literally come with whatever war game they want to come with, of any kind of period or otherwise at any scale, and we will have terrain on tables that they can just sit and play with.
It's literally just a couple of rows of open play tables that are dedicated for the purposes of wargaming. Yeah. And just so that people, again, and it's, something people will turn up for hopefully, and they'll bring the stuff and they'll maybe play for 2 or 3 hours, much the same as with a board game.
Yeah.
Arrange a game with people or come with a friend or friends, play games together, and then enjoy the rest of the convention.
And it's the sort of thing that, I think you've almost alluded to this a little bit, I think, Ian, but the evolution of the convention over time is that we tweak it, we dabble in things. And as John says, he's been pushing for a war games element to the convention for quite some time. And it's like, right, okay, this is the year we'll try it. And it's
that is to say we haven't been doing clever things before. I mean, last time round we had the after 2018 we looked at exhibits for 2019, and we thought, right, who can we invite as an exhibitor that's in that wargaming space?
Yes, no, exactly. We want to make sure that, the name of the convention is Tabletop Scotland, right? So we want to make sure that it's reflective of the tabletop community, and by that I include makers, publishers, retailers that are in Scotland, as well as people outside of Scotland who want to come and visit us, and lots of them do. Give us their money. But yeah, it's the sort of thing that having anything like, I mean, we dabbled with the Starship Simulator in 2019. It was a ridiculously good success, so much so we're having it back. It's things like that we want to experiment with, and obviously make it fit within the jigsaw puzzle that is the floor plan.
So you've got a sort of quite a big dedicated family zone as well.
We do.
How do you think that benefits the con, and how has that changed, and how do you see it changing as the con evolves?
So for in 2018, one of the things we did when we sat down as a group to go, so what is this and who is it for type thing, right? It was kind of like, we're not an event that is dedicated to the hardcore existing gamer, right? They if they want to come, fabulous. We have a games library, we have exhibitors, etc., right? We are not solely targeting them. We want people who are curious about the hobby to come along. And given the age of the hobby, i.e. both, well, not even both, but from a board gaming role-playing perspective, which is my aspects, I mean, it's multi-generational now, right? So there will be people who are my age who have adult children who want to come along, and they may share that passion at home and they want to experience it at a convention. So having a family zone was always something we were going to have. And similarly, having a gateway zone, which is slightly different, was always something we were going to have. The kind of breakthrough that we had was in a moment of why not, I decided to email Harper and go, would you be interested? And they said yes, because if you don't ask, you don't get. And that immediately made it more of a thing, because we were like, right, okay, Harper's going to come. Excellent, right? What can we do with this? How can we grow it? How much space will they want? That sort of thing. So, and the Harper Zone in 2018 and in 2019 was busy throughout. And lots of kids, lots of families coming. And that is fantastic, because we see that as, well, fundamentally, without sounding overly pompous, the future of the hobby.
In 2019, Fabio, who was volunteering and looking after the Habit area, was involved in one of the panels. So he could go and attend the panel and take part in that. I covered, I slotted in and covered the Habit Zone, and
he didn't clear that with any of us, by the way. He just decided to.
Yeah,
just a good-hearted man there.
There was a game where you had different animals and different bits of fruit, and you had to balance them on each other. And to be frank, I wanted to play it, and I did, and it was great. And while I was playing, there were lots of families. There were families coming in, young children playing, right? Showed them the games, demoed it, etc. They talked about where they could get these games. I told them which retailers had the games on the stand. They went, and then an hour or so later, I sold that family, one of those families leaving, with having been to one of the exhibitors, one of the retailers' exhibitors we got, picked up that Habit game and another couple of games, both for the kids and for the adults, and leaving with a bag with stuff in it, right? But the thing is, that was a family. It was your adults and kids. Kids in wheelchairs, not wheelchairs, pushchairs.
Yeah.
Your preteen, a couple of teenagers as well. That, right? And if you look at it from a community point of view, the fact is that no community exists in isolation for a fixed period of time. If you don't have that growth, if you don't have that, if you don't have that element of bringing in younger generations, things die off. I mean, in my other hobby life, I am massively, alluded to already, I love trains. Massive, trains is my thing. This is a great hobby. I love wargaming, I love tabletop gaming, etc. But if it was up to me, I'd be all trains all the time. It's impossible, right? Me and my dad, who's in his mid to late 70s, right? We own shares in a steam engine. Really lucky. Last year,
an actual real train.
Wow.
All 100 odd tons of it when it's got coal in it. And it's in Norfolk and it's fantastic. We go and see it every year when we can, COVID allowing. Last year, we went to the AGM of the shareholders company. It was about 200 shareholders in this company, and Dad and I are part of it. We went there, and one of the things we're talking about is the fact that in a room in which there was 60 people, I, at that point, the grand old age of 42, was the youngest person in that room.
Oh, that's not great.
Right?
Yeah.
So I made a joke and everyone laughed, but ultimately made the joke, which is I just have to make sure that I outlast all those old codgers. And then in 15 to 20 years' time, I'm going to be the sole owner of a steam engine. Because it's really difficult to get kids and youngsters involved in railways.
It's one of the reasons why we contacted Harper originally, because that's one of their big things is, they aside from making board games, they make family toys, they make all sorts of other stuff.
So by getting families in the door now, by getting families in the door in 2018 and 2019 and 2022, we're not just keeping ourselves going as a business, because again, we have to come back to the fact that we're doing this as a business.
Yeah, sure.
So the 13-year-old that arrived in 2018 and played D&D for the first time is hopefully going to be our customer at Tabletop Scotland 2028, 2029, 30 when they're teenagers. They're not spending mum and dad's money, they're spending their money. And they're enjoying the hobby with their friends. If you don't have that catch point early enough, if you're not talking to, we've talked to schools in the past, if you're not involving families, in particular families with, early teen and pre-teen children, your market vanishes really, really quickly. And we've all done it. We've all seen it. I mean, I'm heavily involved in a gaming club in Dunfermline, Dwarf. Dave's involved in it as well. And we notice people, and there's a moment where we've got people that have come along over the years where they've come with parents when they're 10, 11, 12. They get to 16, 17 and they vanish.
Yeah. I mean, it's important for us. I think there's a summary there, right? It's really key that we want to have that offering, and so far our attendees want that offering to be there. And the gateway aspect was there to complement the family zone, i.e., for people who aren't necessarily kids, although absolutely they're welcome to, but are new to the hobby or are curious about the hobby, and we select between 6 and 8 games that are easy to teach, or relatively easy to teach. We tend to have a scale, and we demo those games, but we demo them in a way that we teach them how to start playing, and we leave them alone.
Yeah.
So they're learning how to play it rather than us walking them through it. So Andy Stallard is staffing that for us this year with the support of Ian Cameron, and a couple of others. And it's kind of like, that's just, again, that's about growing the hobby, because we don't have a mission statement, but I suppose that would be part of it, right? It's the sort of thing that we want to make sure that the hobby continues to grow and that the community kind of grows with it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I love it. Every time I've been to UK Games Expo, I've always loved that they are quite open about family zones and like attracting like a wider audience. Aren't just all, well, let's face it, old white men.
Yeah, exactly.
Playing games, and it's good to see a sort of diverse audience coming to the game, and especially young people, coming to the game. Yeah,
because what Richard and Tony do with Expo is so they go, obviously because they're bigger than us, but significantly wider than that. I mean, we've got Imagination Gaming coming this year along with Hachette, and Imagination Gaming work with a lot of schools in England, in particular, to kind of broaden people's knowledge of board games from an educational perspective as well as an entertainment perspective.
Sure.
So it's the sort of thing that we're keen to support them to do something similar in Scotland, and therefore that's why they're coming up to help with our event, which is great. And it's just recognising that those partnerships, are out there, which, again, if you don't ask, you tend to not get.
I mean, the thing with especially with the family zone and the gateway gaming zone, there are no losers in that situation.
No.
It is the easiest win we could ever have as a group of people that organise an event, as a team. It is ridiculously easy for us to just put something in place that we know is going to let people that are new to the hobby or returning to the hobbies come in and go, right, this is a good starting point for me or my family or us collectively. And there's no losing there, because they either find something that they love and will love for years to come, or they go, actually, it's not for me. And that's just good, because you can't you can't force people to enjoy something, but if they do enjoy it,
great.
What we've seen is those that have enjoyed that first bit, that gateway game, getting Ticket to Ride for the first time, or whatever games we've picked, they stay. They don't walk out. Yeah. They stay. They come around, go to the exhibitors, they watch people play, they sign up for Dungeons and Dragons.
Buy a demo or something. They take part in something silly. They go and try something in the library. And one thing we haven't said, and people will shout at me if I don't, is that the Harper zone this year is being staffed by the team at Juniper Green Games, because it's the sort of thing that when we were talking to Harper about this year's event, they were the people who normally do it have moved to France. Fair enough.
Okay.
And it was like, right, okay, so how do we offer that service? And knowing Eric and Colin and Jen and that really well, it was really easy for me to go, would this be something they'd be interested in? And
that's a fantastic.
That's fantastic.
A very family-orientated gaming group in Edinburgh, Juniper Green.
Yep,
they're great.
Who are full of the joys of gaming.
Mm-hmm.
Going to be talking about gaming with people that are interested in learning about it, and it's just an inbuilt recipe for success.
Yeah.
Did you hear that, Eric? No pressure. It's an inbuilt recipe for success.
And also,
I'll be seeing Eric tomorrow and tell him what he said.
Excellent. Tell him that. Tell him that John said that.
Also, on behalf of Dave, hi Jen.
So we've touched a little bit there on sort of the general health of the hobby, and in Scotland, we've seen a couple of big shops shut down recently, including Big Dog Books in Perth. How do you both sort of see the health of the tabletop hobby in Scotland at the moment?
So retail is really hard right now, right? Retail is ridiculously hard right now. I know that from the perspective that my wife owns a wool shop. So it's really quite tough. Now, I think it's doubly so within the tabletop hobby because the vast majority of the product that these people sell is not made in this country. So therefore, shipping and VAT changes and other things like that have compounded that problem. So you've said, Stuart, who owned Big Dog Books, was a fantastic supporter of the convention and was originally going to be an exhibitor at the convention. But when he had to make the decision to close both his Perth and Dundee stores, we felt that for him, right? And similarly, Connor, who had Murphy's Vault and Gala Shields, he's had to close. John, who owns Comic Crazy in Paisley, they are closing soon. I think they've got 1 or 2 weeks left of trading.
Oh yes, I've heard that one as well. Yeah,
yeah, and it must be heartbreaking for them. And I think right now, retail is a really hard place to be. And I think the irony, perhaps, of the pandemic is that the hobby has probably grown, or the awareness of the hobby has probably grown. But the transition back to going to stores for events and to buy product hasn't quite happened yet, and that must be really hard. So and as you know, I used to own a game store, so I probably feel it even more so. It's kind of really tough for them.
Well, we're finding ourselves in a situation now where gaming in general, as in Scotland and further afield, that the pandemic situation has shown that the market is still there. There's a thriving environment where people want to do this. It's a great hobby. The difficulty is translating that into retail.
Yeah.
And prime factors in that, cost, etc. But the reality of the situation is you look across, pick any industry that involves a retail market.
Yeah.
This isn't a new phenomenon. The retail sector has been struggling for years in all sorts of different stuff. You look at all the big department stores that have gone bankrupt, the chains that have gone over the years, and the people that are surviving, that it's either they're working on such a scale that they can cope, or in fact they're working at such a scale that the small independent local retailer can't cope. The other day we were in Perth, myself and Simon were in Perth visiting Lang's, the company that are going to be doing the catering for us at the Jewish Centre this year, and we noticed that there was a small electrical retail shop, good old-fashioned brick-and-mortar electrical retail shop, local company selling all sorts of stuff for electricians and home electronics, etc., right? And we both remarked how really rare it was to see that, Because the fact of the matter is, a big chain like Maplin, couldn't cope. And this small local independent retailer was still doing it. And they can't compete against your Amazons, your eBays, your big, huge, multinational marketplaces. So it's across every part of the retail sector. I think what we collectively can do is be clever with our money. And it's not, I say this regularly to people that I play war games with. I'm quite lucky that I'm barely a 25-minute drive from Common Ground Games in Stirling.
Yep.
And I make a conscious point of knowing that if I've got hobby money to spend on wargaming, I'll go to Steve for that.
Yeah,
sure.
Because, okay, I'd pay more than if I was buying from a bulk online retailer, but alongside the fact that I'm buying my plastic crack off Steve, I've got somewhere to play my games, I've got somewhere to meet people and socialise, etc. And it's being aware of that. And I think that...
And it's Steve, right? It's Steve.
Steve's great.
I like seeing his miserable face every so often.
Exactly. There's a miserable face, but we still like it.
Yeah, and Sky, the shop dog's lovely. And I think...
Common Ground's a great venue.
Exactly, and that's it.
What a venue.
Gaming space and a great venue. And I think that as consumers, I would always say to anyone listening and people that attend Tabletop Scotland is, if you can, buy from your friendly local gaming store. Now, that's an if. I totally get the fact that we're not dealing with cheap hobbies here sometimes.
No.
Yeah. You can pick up a game for £5 sometimes. You can get your paint or whatever for somewhere, and you can save it. I mean, you can buy, there are retailers in that, again, going to Wogan, there are retailers that will give you 20-25% off online purchases for Games Workshop stuff. And I buy a lot of Games Workshop. My main gaming hobbies are Age of Sigmar, which are Games Workshop games. And I can get them cheaper elsewhere. And I'm acutely aware of that. And I know that for some people, if you've got a budget, and that budget won't stretch so far, you buy within your means. You don't, but at the same time, if you can afford to say, actually, you know what, I'll buy it full price from a retailer, then it helps them and it helps you a little bit.
And I think it helps just the general ecosystem of the hobby within Scotland. Because if the more retailers we have, the more visible the hobby is, and therefore the potential of more people playing games exists. It just feels like a natural synergy.
It's a natural environment. It's an ecosystem, and every individual action feeds into that. So it's being aware that you as an individual can help your local shop by buying something there, and that in turn helps them sell to other customers, which means you've got more people to play games with.
Yeah.
And it grows from there. But again, we're all feeling the pinch just now. I don't think anyone isn't.
No.
So we appreciate, and that's what we're trying to do again, Tabletop Scotland, is by having that, by having that environment in place for people to come along. It might be that this is the only convention they get to this year. So we spent, how many hours were we talking about ticket prices this year, Dave?
Ridiculous number of hours.
Literally, we had meetings where we spent 2 hours. We were
looking at version 17 of the same spreadsheet when we did. Well, when I did various modelling to go, well, if we did this, it would look like this.
And for example, one of the things we've agreed from day one is that we're going to charge somebody a ticket to enter the event, the convention. We're not going to charge £2 to sit at a table and play D&D or Pathfinder or any other game. We're not going to charge you to sit and play Ticket to Ride in the Ticket to Ride tournament. No. You've paid to enter the convention. Other conventions charge for playing the games while you're there. Totally get that. Makes sense. Financial point of view. But for us, we want somebody to know that if they're paying the price for a weekend ticket, that's an open path.
It's all inclusive.
Yeah,
it's all inclusive, basically.
And that's how we can help out, by giving people that affordable experience.
Yeah. So I think we'll wrap up questions from me in a second and turn over to the audience, but I've got one more, which we've alluded a couple of times to sort of future plans. So what sort of plans do you have for looking forward to 2023 and beyond for Tabletop Scotland?
So originally our plan for, I think it was 2020 or 2021, I can't remember, but was to go to a 3-day event. And we decided not to do that this year because, first year back, let's not do something stupid. So a 3-day event is something we would still like to do, but we need the commercials of that to stack up, if I'm honest, before we really make that decision. Because it's one of these things that if we can add more space, and the assumption that we need more space, can we add more capacity by giving people the option to come on a Friday?
Sure.
So that's something that we are looking at. The other aspect, of course, is, as we've already kind of touched on, is as that attendance grows, the venue obviously doesn't grow to scale to that. So there may come a point in the future where we need to look at that. We're not at that point yet, but that brings with it completely different challenges. Geographic challenges, commercial challenges, and even when it happens within the year challenges.
Yeah. Would you look at moving it out of Perth at that point, or standing within Perth itself?
So there are only, if you ignore Aberdeen, no offence to anybody from Aberdeen, but if you ignore Aberdeen,
quite a bit further north.
Yeah, there are only 3 venues in the central belt of Scotland. There are only 3 venues in Scotland that have more floor space, all roughly on one floor. Right. One of them is the SEC, which I shouldn't need to state, but is more expensive.
Shocking.
and not insignificantly more expensive as well.
No, I can imagine.
More expensive. The expletives are very heavily implied there.
Yes, they are. Yeah, and then we have the Royal Highland Centre at Edinburgh Airport, which is also more expensive, but not as expensive. But of course, if we have it in Edinburgh, we can't have it in August.
You wouldn't do anything in August in Edinburgh unless you actually.
And then there's another venue that is a maybe option, but it's dependent on all sorts of things, and that's Stirling University, because they have the Sports Scotland campus on site, which is basically big halls.
Yeah.
But that involves a whole load of complexity. Now, I mean, we've spoke to each one of these venues, but purely on the basis to go, what would it look like if we had to go down a route of suddenly having to move venue for whatever reason, what would it look like if? But we have to be clear, we have no desire to move it. We're going to keep it in Perth as long as we humanly possibly can.
Perth, as we've discovered through no effort on my part, I'll get that out of the way before Dave chips in, the actual Jewish Centre, it turns out, is, we wrote exhaustive long checklists of what we wanted in a venue. And
yeah, we did. We back in 2015 we wrote those lists.
And the only place that ticked more boxes was the SEC, right? That was the only place at that point that ticked more boxes. And the boxes it ticked extra, none of those, or cumulatively, could we realistically expect the benefit from being there to be worth the extra cost? I mean, that ultimately comes down to the amount of money that we're looking at there. Whereas with the Jewish Centre, we knew we had space to grow. We knew we had space to learn, because one of the things, this is a big thing, is this is, if we sound like old hats, it's because we're old, not because we're clever. The fact is that we've been learning as we go along on this, because there's no footprint for this, the blueprint. There's no guide on how to run a gaming convention. If there was a guide to running a gaming convention, it would only have 2 words on it, and the second one is don't. And I'm sure everyone can guess what the first one is. And then if you turn the page over, it'll say, I told you so.
Yeah.
So there's no blueprint. So we've been learning as we go along, and what we're trying to do is put those lessons in place as cleverly as we can, and make sure that we don't push to a point where the event is unsustainable. And that sustainable bit is where we're just trying to be clever, play, sometimes maybe a bit safe. We could have probably done 3 days this year. We talked about it.
We did.
And we all said, hang on a minute. We're not, if we hadn't had a 2-year gap,
then it would have probably felt like a no-brainer, right?
We're rusty. We need to get back into the swing of this.
And we don't know if people want to come.
Exactly, yeah. So we're learning as much as we go along as doing, and we're putting those lessons into play. And I think that's one of the great things about, funnily enough, is the great things about doing this in Scotland. The Scotland part of Tabletop Scotland is just as important as the tabletop part of it. We want an event that is an event for people, and we've got people going from all over the world, fingers crossed, and from England, Scotland, and Wales, and Ireland, and Northern Ireland, and etc. But this is the Scotland part of it is really important, and that's why Perth's so good, because you can get right into it. It's a great location for people in Scotland, and it's accessible for elsewhere as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just fits so many parts of what we're after. And just grow it and grow and grow it. And if push comes to shove, there's a swimming pool next door.
No.
What do you mean?
No, we're not using the swimming pool for anything.
Yeah, I still think we should do walk the plank.
No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that.
The insurance said no.
I mean, our furthest away attendee, as far as I can tell, is from Israel.
Wow.
This year.
Cool.
Right. Which is, and we've got people coming from, actually, no, maybe not, Texas. That's further away, right?
Yes.
Yeah, quite a bit further away, yeah. So
They're from Canada for the Grand Clash for Shadespire.
yeah.
With a gentleman who was
weird.
on holiday in Ireland, who booked tickets for the convention to come and play in the Shadespire Grand Clash we had, went on a family holiday Thailand, flew from Dublin to
It was
Glasgow.
a stag weekend. It was a stag weekend.
weekend,
He
yeah.
managed to convince the stag to move the trip to Scotland rather than Dublin, so that he, after the stag, could go to the convention
Brilliant.
and take part in the Grand Clash. That was it.
Yeah,
That's
lovely
pretty-
guy there.
that's pretty
And
good.
he so basically he rocked up with his stuff and turned up and played in the event, and that had a great
I
time.
think it came second or something like that. Did it not?
And he lost to probably one of the
Yeah.
best in the world. So we know we've got potentially got a global reach, but we also want to be acutely aware of the fact that we wanted to put in place something for the gaming community in Scotland.
Yeah,
Sure.
And Perth happens to be pretty much slap bang in the middle from a road network and rail network perspective.
45 minutes from pretty much everywhere, except
Yeah, I'll be driving up myself, and it's very easy to get to. Right, it's enough questions from me anyway. I'm going to turn things over to folks in the audience. So, like I said at the start, folks, if you want to ask a question and be recorded, there's a little show request button at the bottom. That's a little hand wavy symbol. You can click on that. Or if you prefer to just type a question in the Let's Theatre channel, I can ask it to David and John. And I've got one from Simon.
Yeah.
Who's asked. Says I should ask you about how you discovered the Dewar Centre.
So how I discovered it and how John failed to tell me he discovered it are two different stories. So one, how I discovered it was, as I say, my wife owns a wool shop. She was at Perth Yarn Festival at the Dewar Centre. Came back from that and said, you need to go and have a look at that venue. So I turned round to John and Simon and said, right, let's go and have a look at that venue. And John was like, I go there every year with my dad for the Model Railway exhibition. And this is kind of like September 2017, and we'd been talking about hosting an event for 2 years at this point. And not once had he mentioned this venue to me. So yeah, that's the story.
in my defence,
No, there's no defence.
it's a very limited defence. As I have mentioned several times, that I really, 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 really do like trains.
You do,
Right.
yes.
When I'm like, I'm going to look at trains. To be honest with you, it could be in a cave or in the open air. The moment I see those wheels turning around on the track,
You're
everything
fine.
else,
You're there. Yeah, doesn't matter.
right? And the irony is, of course, is that anyone that knows anything about model railways in particular knows that model railways do not. Well, they take up space. An exhibition model railways, layouts that people take to exhibitions, are not ever renowned for being, what's the word I'm looking for, small.
No, they're not small.
Well, as Dave did point out, because in 2018, in July of 2018, Dave and his daughter met myself and my dad and Simon at the Dewar Centre for the Perth Model Rail exhibition. And Dave did point out that there was a layout that was about 120 feet long.
Yeah.
Whoa.
And I'm like, yeah, and I said, oh, it's a part of the East Coast Main Line and blah, blah. And he looks at me and he goes, that's 200 open gaming seats. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's a layout though. And I'm like, yeah, just looking at the trains, and Dave's like, no. And I could see the gears were in his head, and he's going, and I'm like, okay, so I get the point. I might have made a mistake in not mentioning it, but genuinely, if you'd asked me what was in that building other than trains, I wouldn't have known what
He wouldn't have known. He wouldn't know. I mean,
Aw.
fundamentally, he didn't know you were in Perth. You were just driving to a train.
I was right, and
Wow.
I'm like, and it turns out that there's an ice rink and a bowling hall, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
a
but
cafe.
that didn't matter.
Where the cafe was, I knew what the bacon rolls were like.
Yeah.
Couldn't have told you anything else about it. And that's simple. And I'm like, yeah, bunged as well. So my defence is that I like trains.
Yeah, that's his kind of standard defence. But yeah, but fundamentally, as John said, we had a checklist. It ticked pretty much the checklist, and they wanted us.
Great.
Oh yeah,
which was great.
Desperate. They not desperate, but the moment we told them what the event was about, they were like, "Wow, how can we do this?"
Great. Yeah. So from my co-host Jamie, if John is going to go in a Zorb, what game would be perfect whilst Zorbing?
A giant life-size 10-bin bowling alley. I can't think of anything else really.
With you as the ball at that point, yeah.
And I guarantee there'd be a cubicle paying a fiver to throw me down there, roll me down.
There would be,
Make a killing doing that.
Is that a suggestion for next year? Is that what you're saying?
No, because if I'm not to do plank in the pool, I'm not getting zorbed anyway.
Okay, right.
I mean, you could probably Zorb over a pool, right? They float.
Yeah, you could. That could be it instead. It's not what the plank. It's just John in a Zorb on the pool. There you go. Sorted. As long as you're happy to take the insurance risk on that, not me, that's fine.
Well, so here's a question from me, actually. What's it like getting insurance for a con like Tabletop Scotland?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, you have to get what's called events insurance, which covers you for very specific things at an event. And
beyond,
as other people who organise these types of things will know, we are not the standard model for an event. So they ask you questions like, okay, how many guests are you going to have? And it's like, right, okay, what do you mean by guest?
Yeah.
Because they need to, it's like, does that include our volunteers? Does that include guests who are just coming, but we're not selling tickets on the basis of them coming? What do you mean by that? It becomes a bit of a dialogue. The benefit we have is we've used the same insurance company each year, so they know what madness we're up to.
And
so
there's a very interesting set of questions that relate to terrorism. That's
fun. There are, yeah.
And then there's a whole set of stuff about cash and access, and and there was a definition of the word guest, definition of the word volunteer.
Yep.
What makes them they go from being a volunteer to a guest, or vice versa? What DMs fall into.
Yeah, and even what do you define as staff? As a volunteer, a staff member or not? And all of these are factors that go into the equation that pumps out a number. You go, really? That's how much it is? All right, okay. Then, we'll just have to accept that. Thanks.
And then 2 minutes later, somebody goes, hang on a minute. Yeah, plus VAT.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, plus VAT. Oh, I mean, plus
don't get me wrong. It's absolutely something. You should not run an event without having any kind of insurance whatsoever.
Of course not, yeah.
And to be honest, in fairness to the insurance people, every time we've asked them a question, they've been open and transparent about what they want to know and what they're doing. They've actually been really, really quite helpful in many respects. And so we built up a decent relationship with them. I suppose. But ultimately, it's one of those things where you work on the assumption, and I think we started quite early, assume the worst.
Mm-hmm.
We asked the question of the venue. The venue said to us, you must have public liability insurance to a certain amount. I forgot what the amount is. We went to the insurance company and said, the venue are asking for this. They put together a policy and came back and said, actually, we think based on everything you've told us, you want to have this amount instead as your public liability insurance.
Yeah.
And on top of that, here's what we recommend. And one of the factors, for example, that totally changed the shape of the insurance quote was first aiders. Venue staff are the first aid staff. We don't have to, in fact, we're not allowed to supply first aid.
No, we're not.
They made it quite clear as part of our lease that they're responsible for providing first aid staff. So we told...
And bringing it back to the whole thing about how much they wanted us, right? They've made certain things easy. If we were at another venue, like one of the venues we looked at previously, John, way back in 2015, 2016, we would have had to hire in first aiders to be there just in case, because the venue would not provide that to us. Yeah. So it's the sort of thing that the venue just gives us that. That's something they just give us. It's baked into the cost model. That's just easy. Yeah. So yeah. How did we get onto first aiders after? Oh, because you asked about insurance, right?
Yeah. Any other questions from folks listening?
Where is Dave going? John doesn't want to know the answer to that question.
Oh, sorry, was that when
Dave's going to Gen Con, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah. Dave's going to Gen
Con. I never wanted to go to Indianapolis anyway.
No, you didn't. No.
I went to Gen Con once back, way back in the day, and it's gotten like 4 times the size now. It's 70,000 people per day now. Wow, that's a lot of people.
Yep. It is.
Right.
But it's also taken over more space though as well. Obviously,
Yeah, it takes over most of Indianapolis now.
Pretty much.
Best I can tell. What has been the most pleasant surprise that has come out of the con each year?
Oof. You go. Yeah. I think I know what you want. Let's go for it.
My one is going to be, and I've sold this elsewhere. Sunday afternoon, I'm at reception. This family walk in, having seen the sign outside. They literally were just like, we've seen the sign. What's this all about? I give them a little tour, show them everything. Say, right, on you go in, comp the family ticket, and we'll take the hit. I mean, it's a Sunday afternoon, after all. Yeah. You go in, a couple hours later, I see the family, a bit more than a couple hours later, end of the day, I see the family leaving, and in the time they've been in, I've shown them around, shown them upstairs, they've got a daughter with them who, I'm going to say is primary 6, primary 7 age. Well, not quite.
Yeah.
And another little one in a pushchair, and the daughter and the dad sat down at an RPG table, signed up for an RPG, did it together. The DM was more than happy to do it as a twofer. Then as they're leaving, see them leaving, say hello to dad again, and he's got a carrier bag in his hand, and inside the carrier bag is a D&D starter box.
Yep.
Nice.
Several sets of dice, a couple of D&D source books, a dice thingy, a dice...
a dice tray it was, wasn't it?
Dice tray, pens and stuff, and the little girl's clutching her character sheet from the role-playing game, and they're talking about when they're going to do it when they get home.
Nice.
And I'm like, well, that is everything that we're trying to do in one fell swoop. And it literally because they just saw a big sign and said, what's that all about? And I'm like, that's it. That's everything I've ever wanted. Everything I've ever wanted at Tabletop Scotland, with the exception of making Dave play a role game, which I'm going to happen one day, happened in the space of that visit. I could have done nothing else that weekend, and I'd have known it was worth all the work that's gone into it.
Definitely. For yourself, Dave?
It was much shorter. Just the fact that it worked and that it keeps working and people want to keep coming back, it's genuinely a surprise. And that maybe sounds a bit pithy, but it's the sort of thing that when we created this, we didn't know if it would work. So it keeps me kind of going, right, okay, people do want this. Great. And when, as I said earlier in the cast, it's like when ticket sales went online and we blew the doors off, and it's like, right, okay, right, good, right, on with it, right, cool. But that's essentially a big part of the motivation to do it in the first place, because we don't make any money out of this. So let's just kind of make it work. It washes its face. That's all it does.
Comedy aside, the fact that we've managed to stay friends.
Yes, that is that.
I mean,
that's
admittedly,
a very point. Yes, actually,
I have disowned Simon several times, and I've disowned.
That's just because he's your brother.
Question. That aside, the fact is that we've managed to maintain a friendship throughout this as a group because we all know what we're doing, the same thing. We're all doing it for the same reasons, and it worked. Yeah.
From TTS Leaks in our audience.
That's Greg. Yes, thank you, Greg.
Hello, Greg. He would like to know more about the diversity panel that John is hosting at this year's event.
I'm being nice, Ian, because I know you're a family-friendly podcast. I can assure you that in my head the words are not nice. Apparently, I'm allegedly informed, although I think I might have been drinking at the point in time.
You were.
I was drinking. We talked about what we could do for panels, and I actually did suggest, in light of stuff that I'd seen happening in the online gaming world at that point in time, that one thing that we focused on about the people we involve in everything is how we make Tabletop Scotland open to everyone. We, at a very base level, we don't care who you are, as long as you're having fun, right? And how do we discuss that, and how do we make that happen? And one of the things that we talked about, and subsequently I said I will do, I don't remember saying it, but I've been told it, is host a panel on inclusion and diversity in gaming. So we're doing that this year. I've got a great panel lined up. It's actually going to be quite an easy bit of work, because I've only got one question to ask.
Yeah.
He has more in reserve, by the way, just so you know.
I know, but
I mean, that's why I like doing interviews, because basically I just ask a question, then let people talk for a long time.
I've got several written down, but the only question really is, how do we, and by that I don't mean the royal, I mean we as people, make gaming open and inclusive to all? Simple as that.
Yeah.
What do we need to do? And I've got a great panel hopefully lined up. We've got people that are excited.
Not hopefully they are. We've got 5
I'm going to be excited about it. I'm not excited about it. We're going to ask that question and hopefully come up with a few answers on how we explore that. So, and at the same time, try not to insult everyone that's there, because, I might or may not have, be known for, ironically enough, being a bit gobby. There are other words, and it's quite ironic that I'm the one hosting this panel, because if you go and look at the group of us that run Tabletop Scotland and say who's the most likely to put the foot in the mouth, it's going to be me, by some wide margin. And I'm really excited that the people that I might have harangued at panels in the past, hi Josh, can't get their own back, because what are you going to do? Stand up and harangue somebody at an inclusivity panel?
Fair enough.
You're kind of immune at that point.
Yeah,
no, but yeah, it goes back to the identity thing. We want to have,
and we are
people to feel comfortable, whoever they are, whatever walk of life they are, etc.
We have to acknowledge the fact that with one very distinct separation of aspect, we as a group are extraordinarily typical of what people would expect when you say the word tabletop gamer.
Yeah.
We are white men with beards and beards.
Yeah, Jamie and I are conscious of that on the cast as well. We try not to joke about it too much, but the fact of the matter is that I, as a member of the LGBTQ community, I'm conscious of the fact that I'm relatively lucky that to be really specific, I'm in some of the circles we classified as straight passing. So, so I can fit into that environment with absolute, and nobody would bat an eyelid in that respect. But actually, that's not fair. That's not fair on me, and it's not fair on people that aren't in that situation. So we want to make sure that, despite the fact our outward appearance and the way we are is quite normative, actually, that's not who we are. That's not who we want to be, and that's not who we want to be involved with. Sure. Great. Well, I think I'll wrap things up there, gents. So thank you very much both for coming along and chatting to us about Tabletop Scotland. I'm looking forward to the event myself. Like I say, I don't have any commitments, so I'm just going to be there gaming and maybe chatting to people. Might do a bit of brainwaves work. Who knows?
You never know.
Yeah. Never know. Might have a recorder in my pocket just in case. But yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it. You've got a lot of great exhibitors coming along, and yeah, it's going to be fantastic. I'm really looking forward to just a couple of days of gaming. It's going to be fantastic. Thank you so much for both coming along. Thank you very much for our audience for coming along and listening and asking questions. And yeah, it'll be the first time Jamie and Mr. Shatler, our older host, might be along as well. So
excellent.
Might be the first time we've gamed together in quite some time, which would be absolutely fantastic.
Exactly.
But thanks both of you for coming along tonight, and thank you to our audience. We will wrap up the cast part of that just now. Thank you very much, everyone. Good night.
Bye.
Cheers.